Assalamu alaikum, family. Welcome to the Sajdah Morning Coffee Talks, where we talk about life, love, and business. And we're just going to chit chat this morning. So grab you some coffee, some tea, whatever it is that you enjoy in the morning. And we'll be right back in a couple of minutes. See you in a few.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided aright, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judges, and none can judge against Thee, and he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee, and I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
Assalamu alaikum, family. Grand rising to everyone. How's everybody doing today? I pray you all are doing well. It's Saturday. It's the beginning of August. Um, we in a good space, y'all. We here. We woke up. Some people are questioning their existence, and there's somebody out there questioning their existence because they're going through something, or they're hurt about something, or some challenge came to them. And I just want to say to you, look, you woke up. You woke up and you're here. And that means the world, because there's a lot of people who didn't wake up this morning. And so you woke up, let your feet hit the ground. Let the fact that your feet hit the ground be a sound of gratitude, and keep it moving. Keep it moving. There's always a chance for something to work out. Always a chance. And so we just have to keep going and keep moving and keep moving. And even when other people don't understand it, I think some people be so in despair, they be just thinking, well, I'd have killed myself by now, so you should do the same. But don't listen to that. Don't listen to that. There's been so many people that I've been talking to lately who are just really going through it. And they're doing the best they can to maintain a high vibration. And I just want to say to you, keep fighting. Keep fighting to heal. Keep fighting to learn and to grow. Every time you go through something, you should be looking, you should be asking, what am I here to learn? What is this here to teach me? How do I grow through this? And you'd be surprised in just doing that process, how things will begin to look differently. Sometimes we're just on the wrong path. And that sometimes is really tough for us to swallow. Sometimes we get into something and we heard the messaging wrong. Like we was meant to go to that church, but we wasn't meant to be the pastor. Or we was meant to go to that job, but we weren't supposed to stay that long. We were meant to meet that man or that woman, and he wasn't supposed to be our husband. He was supposed to be a good friend. Or, brother, she wasn't supposed to be your wife. Maybe she was your business partner. So sometimes we just misread energy. And then as we're going through that process, we have to go, whoa, wait a minute. Something ain't right. And so don't be so quick to just abandon the whole situation. It could just very well be that we made a mistake, or we needed to go down the wrong path so that we could be clear on what the right path actually is. So sometimes we just make a mistake, and it's okay. Maybe we got fired from that job because while maybe we got a degree in education, maybe we weren't supposed to be a school teacher. Maybe we weren't supposed to be in that school. Things happen. So don't be so married to circumstances that if you ever have to move away from it, that you miss the lessons, because you're just going to end up repeating another circumstance that's going to be set up and designed to teach you that message. Because here's what's happening. We're not talking spook God talk. We're talking about, I was having, let me start this way. I was having a conversation with someone just yesterday, and they were talking about curses and family curses. And I said, well, you know what? I said, instead of making it so big like that, let's dial it back. Let's unravel it. Let's think of it this way. We have patterns of thoughts and patterns of behavior that create a certain energy. And then we know from the law of physics that the energy that we create draws certain subjects and certain circumstances to us. It dictates how we navigate through whatever aspect of life that we're going through. And when those behavior patterns, when those thought patterns, when those energy patterns begin to change the circumstances and the way we function and how we navigate, they start to produce stuff. And then we navigate around that. And then pretty soon we got a family habit or a corporate habit or a family way of being or a corporate way of being, okay, that becomes our culture. And then when that culture begins to produce something that is negative, we may say, "Oh, this company is cursed." Or we may say, "This family is cursed." Well, to unravel that, we have to change the energies and the behaviors. The cursing comes because we keep repeating the same old bad patterns, the same old negativity over and over and over again. We pass it down from generation to generation, and then we never change. This is why it's so important that those of us that have children and youth in our lives, that we show them different patterns of living. The girls and boys need to see their mothers being winners. They need to see their fathers being winners, because that will help them to begin to create a life pattern that is a winning life pattern, as opposed to a life pattern that is a negative life pattern that we later in our spooky world call a curse. And then we got to go see somebody to get the curse up off of us. But when in essence, it's an energy flow, it's an energy pattern. So we have to work on changing our energy, changing our thoughts, changing our practices, changing our behaviors, maybe even changing our environment. You know how sometimes as women, this happens with men too, you tend to date the same person over and over again. They just may look a little different. Or some men, especially with men, you'll see where the women that they've dated, like all the baby mamas look alike. The wife looked like the baby mama. And the last 3 girlfriends that they went out on a date with all look alike. There's a pattern. We do it as women. Some of our patterns are so strong that we continuously draw people with the same name or that look alike. And and so when you see that person that looks like that, when you try to change up your vibration and your pattern, you got to go, I can't talk to you, because you represent the old pattern that I was in. Or maybe they don't look alike, but sister, you get on the phone with them and you start hearing the same language. You start seeing the same behavior. Well, instead of you settling in to the behavior that is familiar with you because you've dated this man so long, maybe what you have to do is say, I can't date this person again, because maybe you're not strong enough. Maybe you're not strong enough to change your behaviors. And so you need to find somebody that brings something else out of you. Does that make sense? So sometimes those family patterns, those family outcomes, they're not curses. They're behavioral changes that we got to dig deep to change. Some people say, you know what? Every man born into my family is an alcoholic. Well, what are the conditions that create that, because we got epigenetics. So those behaviors then go down into the DNA of the next person and the next person and the next person. Well, we got to start unraveling some of that stuff. There's good epigenetics and there's bad epigenetics. The good might be that you come from a family of fighters. You come from a family of survivors. You come from a family of women and men who got strength out of this world, who have survived the inevitable, the most dangerous, the most difficult, the most challenging situations. They knew how to make something out of nothing and survive. That's good. That's in your DNA. That's in your cellular structure. But what if, this is going to be a tough one for y'all, but just what if you traced your DNA and you actually came from, after you were kings and queens in Africa, but you actually came from a breeding farm where there were no emotional connections allowed to your breeding process or your sexual desires. And then what if you find out and you realize, I'm living my life like that still? Just knowing that, just having that awareness can help you to work on and go find the targeted tools that you need. Maybe you need to go find tools that will help you with sex addiction. Maybe you need to go find tools that will help you with family connections, because maybe your family and the epigenetics in you from maybe 2 or 3 generations came from a breeding farm. I met somebody like that. And when I was talking to him, he was in counseling, had been in counseling to work through that kind of stuff. And he talked about the other behaviors that this dictated in his life. It was very fascinating. Very, very fascinating. And he found that out through a genealogy test, where he found out where he was from and started tracing it back. And that's what he found out. But it was good for him because he was able to break what we would call a family curse, or this pattern that was set up in his family for generations, by learning this information. I think I told y'all, even when I tested and went and did my genealogy stuff, I actually did it twice. I did like the generic one online, and then I actually went to an actual genealogist who takes your blood and matches stuff. And I come from a family of healers. And this was interesting in my family, which is not uncommon. I have a book. It actually is about entrepreneurship, but it talks about how, let me say this real quick. It talks about how many of the freed slaves after Reconstruction went back to the professions that their family was in before they were enslaved. That's deep right there. Well, when I traced mine back, and it was so fascinating, on both sides of my family, both sides Fulani. What are the chances? You could say, okay, maybe, I don't know. What are the chances that both my mother and my biological father would have DNA that is Fulani, Muslim? And then they were on my grandmother's side, they were healers. So they were the people who traveled with the colonists and put together the medicines and really served as like doctors. you call them like medicine doctors. And they were the people who had like, they were like, like a shaman or somebody you went to go see when you had an issue. And then they also would give them the medicines. And that was in the tribe that I traced back to, that was before slavery. So on that side of the family, then the European that colonized them had those members of my family that traveled with him and went up and down throughout sub-Saharan Africa, West Africa, and then down into the Caribbean, into Haiti, and then up through to Louisiana, which then explained for me, and I was in this profession at the time, why I had developed what I was calling a strong sense of professional intuition in the healthcare field. And it was so strong that one of the hospitals that we were working at, so at the beginning, we had an office inside of a hospital. And while we were inside the hospital, I used to do some kind of consulting work for the executive team of that particular hospital. And from being around, but primarily from my business partner spending a lot of time teaching me medicine and teaching me how to use my senses in medicine, I thought I was developing this professional intuition, so much so that these doctors and leaders, they had a bet going around the hospital that I was really a medical doctor who was just kind of up in there spying and pretending like I was a consultant. And I was like, no, I promise I never went to medical school. They didn't believe me. And I thought that was interesting. That's how I got my honorary doctorate name. It's not a real medical, but that's how I got it. Until literally some doctors would send patients to the office and say, go see Dr. Muhammad. And the front desk knew to say, well, you can't see her. She's not a patient. She can't be a referral. But some doctors didn't believe it. What I learned, though, was that because the epigenetics that was in me that came down through my family, not only was I developing a professional intuition, I probably was picking up on the mind and the mannerisms and the behaviors, right, of my ancestors, who for generations that had been their job. And then not to mention being a Muslim. So those patterns, that would be, if it was a bad thing, somebody would say that's a curse. You see? And then being a Muslim, I will tell you, I remember I was a tutor for the Foreign Affairs Department in college, like helping people with conversational English. And I remember meeting this woman from Sudan. She was a Muslim, and I remember she was a beautiful lady. She was really, really dark chocolate, just a rich color. And she wore a headdress, and she had just got married. And so she had the henna tattoos on her hands. And I just remember when I looked in her eyes, there was something very familiar in her eyes. Now, when I traced my DNA, some of it was from Guinea. We know that Guinea was a port, a very important port for mid-Atlantic travels. If you study, they came before Columbus. Most of them, including is Abu Bakari, left through the port of Guinea. I think even Christopher Columbus left through the port of Guinea. So I don't know how we doubted how true it was when Ancestry said that I was from Guinea, because being that that was a port, there were a lot of people and a lot of tribes in that area. But when I later learned that the that I came from a nomadic Fulani family, it made sense. So we weren't really sure, really, in essence, what region it is. It was a little easier to trace the one side's region. We knew the Fulani blood matched, but it was difficult. And then, there's all kind of things that they use to test this stuff out. It's very fascinating. Made me want to all of a sudden start studying genealogy. It's extremely fascinating. And then what they could get from a woman and what they could get from looking at other family members of yours that might be in the database. It's fascinating. How much they could get if you were a man, if you're a woman, just super powerful. So anyway, going back to the nomadic piece of it, not knowing for sure like what region, if they came, many of the Fulani came from the east to the west. We were guessing that. And then there were two different body types also that they found in the DNA. So when I looked at this woman's face that I was teaching this conversational English to, there was a connection to her. And I remember walking away from the little building that was the Foreign Cultures Department and going back to my dorm room. And I said, oh, I think I'm a Muslim. Now, at that time, I was trying to figure my faith out. And on Sundays on campus, I would go to Mass at the Catholic Church, which is how I grew up. And then I would go to the campus Baptist services. So I would go to two. I'd leave the house early, go to one, and then go to the other. And so there was starting to be a calling to try to figure that out. And I just remember being in a space where at one point I stopped going to both because it just didn't resonate with me. And I was in a bookstore and I bought a Holy Quran. And there was just something about it that resonated with me. And when I was talking to this woman about her religion, it resonated with me. And then I started thinking back on studying world culture, world history, and world religion way back in the 3rd or 4th grade. And it was something about Islam and Taoism that just resonated me, but I didn't really have the courage or the know-it-all to go deeper into it. And so that, I think some of that is epigenetic. And as I become more aware of myself, I can feel it. There's an antiquity to my faith and how I believe and who I am that I can't explain. And so if that was a bad thing, somebody would call that a curse. Okay. So all of this work that we're doing around becoming more aware of who we are, all this work that we're doing around prayer and meditation, all this work that we're doing around trying to figure out what we showed up on the planet to do so that we can monetize that assignment and that authenticity is going to help us to unravel some of these behavioral patterns, both good and bad. All right. So that we can learn a new lifestyle, learn a new way of thinking, and generate new energy in our lives. Some of us are quote unquote cursed from a health standpoint, and we think it just runs in our DNA because everybody in our family had diabetes, for example. Or I always joke around, and somebody asked me to come and meet them and go have ice cream the other day, and I said, "Girl, I'm trying to refrain from becoming Big Mama. I ain't going for no ice cream. We can have coffee." Um, what are we saying here? That if you look at your family life patterns and you don't change the pattern, then because of those epigenetics and because of those behaviors, you're going to end up with the very same outcome. If your mother has diabetes and your grandmother has diabetes and her mother before that had diabetes and they were getting amputated and next thing you know, they died from complications related to diabetes, then guess what? You need to go, whoa, wait a minute, because 9 times out of 10, whatever behaviors are inside of me that I'm doing that are leading me down that road are so natural and so second nature to me because they came from the family that I came from. I learned them growing up. Maybe it's the type of food you eat. Maybe it's how you process stress. You know those families where they exist in our hood where you don't want to mess with them? Because if you mess with one, they're going to come out against you and they got a behavioral pattern that's so nasty. They're like a gang. Those are behavioral patterns. It's nothing to be ashamed of. You just know that you got to be mindful of it. You can turn this around. You can change it. And so that's why I'm also encouraging us to have a certain level of discernment when it comes to truth. And what do I mean by that? Don't let nobody tell you, don't listen to this person. You shouldn't like that person. So everything they say can't be true. People do that with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. They're like, well, folks don't like him and I don't like certain things he talks about. But that doesn't mean that everything he talks about you can't relate to. You probably can relate to 90% of it, but 10% of it, you're like, mm-mm. You got to do the same thing with these candidates, people who are running for office in your local elections, in your in your state elections, in your national elections. What are the topics? What are the issues? What are they going to do for you? What does that mean? What does their candidacy mean in terms of policy for you? I don't think that there's any candidate that you're going to agree with 100% of the time because there's so many issues, right? That nobody out here is going to come and address 100% of your issues. You just have to use the type of critical thinking that allows you to analyze and say, okay, if I put all these candidates up on a board and I have the pros and cons, well, this one is the only one where maybe I got 60% of what I like about what they say. The other 40%, I don't like it. But the other people over here, 80% of what they say, I don't like. So we got to look at this thing mathematically. And we have to do the same thing with the behaviors that come down to us from our family, even the good and the bad. The good, we put that in the good column and we go, okay, more of this. The bad, we go, okay, we got to change this pattern. It might be the way you think. It might be the fact that you all process death the same. It may be the fact that you relate to, you have relationship drama, the same relationship drama in the family. It really just depends, but it's up to you to look at that pattern. I can't give you every single example, but those epigenetics that in our culture we call curses can be unraveled and turned around if you want to. Once you become aware, and it's not that we sit up and focus on it. I don't want you focusing on and trying to find all these negative things. I don't want to hear 30-minute conversations with you the next time you come in session with me where you're talking about all the bad stuff, because the more you focus on it, whatever you focus on expands. I want you to hit it and move on. I want you to go, you know what? Grandma taught us to eat cake and ice cream every night. She ended up with diabetes. My mama eats cake and ice cream every night. She got diabetes. I'm eating cake and ice cream every night. And they said I was pre-diabetic. Boom, what does that mean? Change the behavior. Some of y'all be like, well, okay. Let's say you say, well, you know what? My family loves pork chops. And then everybody eat pork every day. Or everybody eats salty stuff every day. So everybody got high blood pressure. Well, what are the behaviors that need to be changed? How are we processing data in a similar manner that we can make an adjustment? What can we do? How can we change? You can learn a lot from that kind of stuff. So let me see y'all in the chat here. Let's see. We got Brother Lamont up in the house. Said good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam, sir. Welcome back. We got Sister Betty. Happy Saturday, everyone. Sister Betty is a new business owner. We're very proud of her. Good morning, Mother. Happy Saturday. Mother sponsored a student for the financial trauma boot camp yesterday. And so we've identified a student that her sponsorship is going to benefit. And hopefully we'll be able to have some of those students come on the show after the financial trauma boot camp and talk about what they learned. And we'll do some check-ins with them, throughout the month, throughout the year, so that we can see. Okay. Let's see. We got King Me says, teacher queen. Welcome, King Me. Coke Reynolds says, good teaching. Brother Lamont said, yeah, he noticed that, but he switched it up too. Owner Financing Real Estate and Land says, Assalamu alaikum. He's Robert 11X Minor. Okay. Sister Monica's in the house. Wa alaikum salam says, great Saturday. Servant Nasir, I see you. I see you. Wa alaikum salam. We got Goddess of Light. Ooh, what a beautiful name. Assalamu alaikum, she says, beloved sister and family here. Goddess of Light. That is beautiful. Brother Recognize talks about lifestyle patterns. Mom says, clarify those are examples. We don't have diabetes. Clarify those are examples. We don't have diabetes. I'm not sure what you mean, Mom, but yeah, these are family examples of patterns that we see. I don't know if maybe Mom thought that by my example, I was saying that the family has diabetes. I'm not sure, but I think you all were clear that that's just an example. When I give examples, I'm not necessarily talking about my own family. So hopefully nobody in my family gets triggered by that. No, we're not talking about actual people in the family. I'm giving people examples of how these patterns can be a through line in your family. But I'm going to say this, though. I will say this. If that epigenetic is there, when you start to study herbal medicine, now I'm going to go into my medicine doctor stuff. You start to study herbal medicine, you may find certain mineral deficiencies in your body that are consistent with a disease that a parent has. And you may not have the full-blown disease, but you may have certain mineral deficiencies that you then can begin to treat so that you can turn that around. So if your great-grandmother and your grandmother and a bunch of people in your family have diabetes, there are certain mineral deficiencies associated with that. And so a lot of times when you take your blood, you will find those deficiencies, and they may not be at that percentage yet where you would be considered, quote unquote, diabetic. diabetic or hypertensive or cancerous, but there are things that you can treat. That's why knowing your family history is a good thing, because if you know, that's why they ask you your medical history. What they're supposed to do is help you test for some of the deficiencies that have showed up in your family so that you can make sure that you don't go down that road. So, while you may not have that, you may very well have certain deficiencies that, if you're not careful, can lead you down that road. So that's an important thing to know and understand. And you have to approach this stuff in a very non-emotional, non-attachment type of way. And that's really, really critical when you're doing this kind of healing. Detach from what you see. Look at the data, look at the results, and go, okay, I have a deficiency here, here, and here. So, and then you got to go somewhere where you can get a real blood test. But you can say, I have a deficiency here, here, and here, and start treating that. What kind of herbal supplements are you taking? Here's another thing you can do. If you know that you have certain strengths in your family, you can start to focus and have exercises and things that you can do that can enhance that, so that you go deeper into the refinement of that skill. You can do that too, but the important thing is you got to detach yourself emotionally. You know, you got to get away from that, because it's more than just somebody saying it. It's in the epigenetics. So it's probably why you heard me say to my friend, like, I don't want no cake and ice cream, but I go hang out with you. Right? Somebody, let's see, said, okay, Rando, we don't know who you are, and I don't know who you're addressing like that, but we're going to see if you behave yourself and you can stay in the chat. But we got to approach ourselves like scientists, right? We have to. We're going to block this person already. You got to approach life and approach things like a scientist. And you got to sit down and put your thinking cap on and go, how do I improve? Here's the other problem that we have sometimes as Black people when it comes to this. We get attached. We're very attached, obviously, to our family. And we're attached to our concept of them and who they are. And so when we learn something that is not so positive, or maybe something that we need to change or improve upon, we struggle. And I think that's another challenge that we all got to work on. Approach it like a scientist. Doesn't mean you don't love them. Doesn't mean you don't care about them. It just may mean that it's time for you to look at it like a scientist and improve upon it. That's what we're taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. We got to approach this thing like a scientist. That's how I approach my body. That's how I approach the improvement of things that I work on in my mind. That's how I approach what herbs and stuff I take. I don't just take something because I saw it on television. I'm pulling my blood work. I'm looking at my epigenetics and I'm going, okay, let me take this. Let me start taking that. Let me start working on this or this. This is the reason why they do a H&P or a history and physical when you go to the doctor, because you need the history and the data to help you with the diagnosis so you understand what's happening with the person right here and right now. So it's that, it's important. For example, for me, I grew up having severe allergies. Well, I had to learn what herbs and what combinations of foods that I can eat and that I can't eat, so that I could be clear on how to make sure that my skin stayed clear and that my eczema didn't return, or that I wasn't, breaking out in hives, or, you know, waking up with my face swollen, or just that feeling inside of when that allergic outbreak would happen. It's so bad that I was like, I don't want to go through this. So I spent a lot of time and money studying that. And I started learning. They will ask you, do you have this in your family? Do you have that in your family? You're responding a certain way, maybe to yeast. You respond a certain way, maybe to sugar. That, I'm sorry to stay on this diabetes point, but this whole diabetes thing, and I studied this, it being in the cardiovascular world, is interesting because the food that they give us, they know that it's causing certain deficiencies that can put people on the road to becoming diabetic. So then they have these categories when you go to the doctor and they say pre-diabetic, and then they say diabetic. And my business partner used to say, there's no such thing as pre-diabetes. You either are diabetic or you're not. And so he used to always say that when you study those mineral deficiencies in your body, if you can try to catch it then, it'll prevent the onset of it. So you should look up mineral deficiencies related to certain diseases. And if you know that you see any traces of that in your family, start taking that herb, start taking that supplement so that you boost up that genetic weakness that may exist in your body. And then make sure you don't practice those behaviors. But now they got everybody on, Ozempic and all these semi-glutatides. And let me tell y'all something about the semi-glutide. When I first went into healthcare, and I would be helping with putting the system and everything together. And then as we started building the clinics, I started going and doing what in auditing, we call it like observations, where you go into the plant and you watch them make the widgets so that you can see every aspect of it and you can document it. Well, I started doing that with the doctors and going in the room. And I had never seen these severe cases of cardiovascular disease, especially diabetes. I had never seen it before. It was just horrible. It was just horrible. And I remember a couple came in. They happened to have been white. The husband had some popliteal and tibial issues in his legs and some blockages. And so Dr. Dormer was going to fix that. But he had been told that he was pre-diabetic. And Dr. Dormer was explaining that, no, there's no such thing, in my opinion, as pre-diabetic. You already have it. It's not what they wait to call full-blown diabetes when you are in the need of insulin. He said, he started explaining to him how the vessels had begun to contract. When you have diabetes, vessels begin to contract. He started showing him evidence of that in his feet and in his legs. People who get a lot of times darkness around the toes, there's an arterial issue. So he started explaining that kind of thing. Start getting that lack of blood flow in the feet and things like that. He was explaining that. And the man went to his doctor, his endocrinologist, and was able to afford a semi-glutide, which is today what we know as Ozempic. When he came back, we saw him in a few months. He lost probably 50, 60 pounds. He looked great. He had started running. He had started walking. He was in his 70s. Wife was happy. Everybody, doing great. He did well with the procedure that we did on him. And I started seeing this pattern. And I asked my business partner, I said, why do the Black people come in? I thought it was a racial thing, which a lot of times wealth issues or access issues become racial. But that's what I saw at first. I said, but why do the black people come in and they got gout and gangrene and amputation, and there's, all these complications, and they're on all these different medications. But the white people come in and they take this thing called a semi-glutide, and then next thing you know, they okay. And he said, well, insurance doesn't pay for the semi-glutide. And so it's a wealth issue. And he said since they can't afford the semi-glutide, they're on whatever their insurance company will pay for, which causes additional complications. I was like, what? So when I started coaching, I started telling people, do not limit your healthcare treatment to what the insurance company will pay for. I saw a perfect example there. And then when people started taking things like Ozempic, and folks was like, well, they're not supposed to take this for weight loss drugs. No, they're not. You're not supposed to just take it just to be losing weight, because it can affect your insulin dependency. But a lot of people probably are pre-diabetic or diabetic because of the diets that we have. Some people eat nothing but sugar, nothing but items that turn into sugar. Red meat turns into sugar. Carbs turn into sugar. All these things that turn into sugar, some people, that's their whole diet. And so while a doctor may not say to them, this is what you are, that's what they are. So then when they go take Ozempic, it corrects things. It corrects their blood pressure. It helps their insulin levels, prevents them from spiking. And then they go, oh, look, I lost weight. Well, really it's because it probably corrected something in you that was wrong. But again, we have to approach this thing like scientists, and we have to pay attention. Some people have eaten this way so long that when they start eating one meal a day, it still doesn't correct it, or it doesn't correct it fast enough in order for them to get their desired results. So instead of going and taking the chemical version of the natural herb, there are natural herbs that you can take that can regulate those things in you so that you can begin to function your pancreas and your thyroid. I didn't plan on talking about this today. Why y'all doing this to me? So your pancreas, your thyroid, your endocrine system can regulate. I'm not going to give out any herbs or anything, but you all can look that up. But there are certain, Dr. Sadie talks about it a lot. There are certain natural supplements that you can take so that you don't have to order this expensive drug that we still don't know what the side effects are. Okay. And a lot of it has to do with how we process stress as well. Okay. So Garland says, that's true. Approach it like a scientist. Brother Mont said, whoa, that's deep. You teaching, sis. Thank you, brother. Yeah, no, this is real. Because a lot of these foods that we eat, and sometimes it's just things that we like. I'm a big salty, crunchy girl. I don't really like sweets. So whereas some people may say, man, I'm just a sucker for eating ice cream every day. I'm the kind of person I would grab some chips. I'll eat some fries. But that right there is a habit that I had to break. Why? Because it ain't like they real potatoes in the daggone chips. You'd be better off learning how to fry your own chips, your own potatoes, and make your own. So that chemical that's in there is causing something. The salt that is used to preserve it is causing a mineral deficiency. So in breaking that habit, I did two things. I started to supplement my herbs with whatever that habit could have created to address the habit that herb could have that habit could have created. So I used the herbs to address that habit. And then If I decide that I want to have like a turkey burger and stuff, you know what I do? I have this great recipe where I take, carrots or some type of root vegetables. I'll take like a white carrot and some turnips and cut them like fries and put them in an air fryer. Or if you don't have an air fryer, you can bake them, put a little sea salt on them, and maybe even a little Parmesan cheese. They got the same crunch as eating a French fry, and actually, you're actually eating a vegetable. And those root vegetables are really good for you. So I do things like making a root vegetable mash. So instead of having mashed potatoes, I'll have a turnip mash. So I'll take turnips and you boil them and make them like you might make a mashed potato without all the extra cream and all of that stuff. But you can put the right herbs and the right mix in there. And, if you eat that with your chicken breast or whatever, it'll feel like you have mashed potatoes. There's cauliflower mash that you can make. I'm going to come out with a little recipe book that's just Sajdah's recipes so that you all can try it. But yeah, but the fries, you can definitely make those with vegetables, whether it's carrots. You could do it with the orange carrots, but it tastes better with the white carrots, or even with like a turnip or any white root vegetable. You could go in the store and get it and cut it up and make it just like a fry. And it's actually a vegetable that you're eating. So it's all kind of ways to hack the brain and trick the brain. Yes, that is right. We learned this as Muslim girls in training, that the kitchen is our laboratory. Kitchen is our laboratory. When we have certain immune issues, where we're catching a cold, if we're struggling with a sinus infection, we know how to go to that navy bean soup and we use it as a medicine. We make enough of it so that as we're eating it every day, sometimes we'll go on a fast and just eat nothing but the navy bean soup, because we know that the minerals in that navy bean will help to balance out what's deficient in our body. So we got to keep it real, all the way real with ourselves, and approach our bodies like scientists and use our kitchen as a laboratory. And this is real talk. And this is how we're going to get away from these things that people in a spooky way will call curses, that you can't just pray your way up out of. You got to behave your way up out of a curse. That's somebody's word right there. You can't just pray your way up out of what we call curses. You got to behave your way up out of it. Why do you behave your way up out of it? Because that's what started it. That's what started it. You got to behave your way up out of it. You got to change the energy, change the vibration. If everybody in your family has high blood pressure, then what are the behaviors? If everybody in your family has certain issues in relationships, I could just keep going on and on and on. Even if you don't have them, you got to study like a scientist the behaviors that you could very well have picked up just from growing up in that family and just from having the genetic DNA of the people in that family, and then use your kitchen as your laboratory. As mothers, we should be using the kitchen as our laboratory for our children and for our babies and for our husband. This is real talk. The woman is a scientist. And some of you brothers are out here, you single on your own. I suggest you become scientists and use the kitchen as your laboratory too. All right, y'all. Good talk today. I pray that we all got something from it. Hopefully I didn't offend anybody. No desire to offend anybody. It's just a matter of getting us to look at things and pay attention to things. So hopefully you weren't triggered by any examples that I gave. That's for everybody. Sorry, Mom, if you felt offended by something, but definitely not intended on that. The idea is for us to learn, and it's how I approach the scientific approach that I use to my life. So when you see my little herbal mix that I take every day, it's based on the epigenetics that are in my family. And I use my kitchen as my laboratory. I decide when I need something green. Oh, it's time to eat some green stuff. It's time to put some colors in the diet, all based on how I feel and a very scientific approach to it. All right, y'all. So I hope you all are signing up and ready to go for the financial boot camp. Thank you again for those of you who have sponsored a student. We got students ready to go. We picked another one yesterday based on the sponsorship we got yesterday. And we are working towards filling up this space. We got I think it's 9 days left. It's on August 11th. I did 2 shows yesterday that are going to be airing on television this week talking about the financial boot camp. So I want you guys to go out there and sign up. Use the QR code that's right here in the corner, or just go to Eventbrite and type in financial trauma boot camp and you can sign up. We got to make sure that we stop passing down these traumas. We got to change our mindset so that we don't use permanent words like curse and spells. It's behaviors and patterns and energy. We're going to take control of this thing and we're going to get up out of this, but we got to learn how to change the language so that we fix it and tweak it. All right, family. May Allah bless you. See you all, inshallah, on Monday. Next week is going to be real technical because we're going to be talking about corporate governance. And then on Thursday, we have Sister Carmen coming from the International Modest Fashion Show that she's doing August 30th and 31st. I am so honored that she's going to honor me as one of her entrepreneurs of the year at the event. Mom says she was clarifying for a friend. Okay, I understand that. The Modest Fashion Show is August 30th and 31st, and she's honoring me as one of her entrepreneurs of the year. And so we're going to have her on the show next Thursday. And so I can't wait for you guys to meet her and to learn more about the International Modest Fashion Show that's going to be right here in Chicago at the Drake Hotel on Saturday. Yeah, on Saturday, on the 31st, I'm sorry. And then on the August 30th, she is doing the awards banquet at the Salam restaurant. So if you don't have your tickets, I heard the Salam is almost sold out. So y'all may want to go, and I'll post a link. I actually think there's a link on my Facebook page. Just go and check out the Facebook page and you all can come and attend. All right, we'll see you all next week. Make it a beautiful day and happy Saturday. Peace and blessings.